Greetings, friends. I'm going to talk about 3 warning signs that you may be suffering from classical liberalism, a disease which has affected our civilization for about 400 years. Alexander Mercouris is a good example of a classical liberal. Well-spoken, well-educated, and I appreciate his content covering the war in Ukraine. He sympathizes with Russia. You'd think he would realize that Russia is not classically liberal, at least not like the West is. You'd think he would realize how evil the elites are in the West. He must realize how evil the establishment is. But he still has faith in classical liberalism, the same ideals which these elites espouse. At least they espouse it in their words, if not in their actions. Now, I want to briefly discuss Gonzalo Lira and how he relates to Alexander Mercouris. Gonzalo Lira is an American-Chilean blogger, author, and he was in Ukraine, and his videos and live streams were critical of Ukraine and perhaps too sympathetic to Russia. So the Ukrainian regime, the Zelensky regime, threatened him once, and recently, well, some months ago, they arrested him and, put him through a tough process. And Alexander Mercouris is coming out to speak on behalf of his friend, Gonzalo Lira, and this is where we really see the classical liberalism shining through. And there are many warning signs that you may be suffering from this illness, but one warning sign is that you believe in the concept of political persecution, whereas the thing is, it's all persecution. So to call something political persecution, like in Gonzalo Lira's case, you're not really seeing that everything is political, everything involves real power. So everything is going to have an effect on your society, even if it's the family unit. To say that, well, this is political persecution because those are political party leaders being persecuted, or that's a newspaper editor being imprisoned for political reasons. Yeah, we can see that, but is that distinction really helpful? Ultimately, it's actually does more to obscure the nature of power, because it sets up this distinction. Oh, we've got political. Oh, it's, he's a newspaper editor, so he should be able to say whatever he wants. He's a vlogger, so he should be able to say whatever he wants. But you can't shoplift, because shoplifting hurts our society. But you don't think sharing your opinions has an effect on society either? Of course, they both involve power. They're both going to affect society. So anyways, that's sign number 1. That's political persecution. No, it's just persecution. Alexander Mercouris, in regards to Gonzalo Lira, was saying, and I quote, "Freedom of speech is a civil right enshrined in Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights. It is a protected right exercised by all individuals, not even just citizens, on the territory of the EU, the European Union." That was more or less a quote. So the case for granting Gonzalo Lira political asylum in the European Union is a good one. And he may be right. Gonzalo Lira may have a good case to get political asylum if he gets out of Ukraine. But that depends only in so much as the European Union remains true to these stated principles, which we know it may not. I mean, all these Western liberal democracies, we saw how they behaved during the so-called pandemic. They suspended all your liberties in an instant, based on the flimsiest of pretexts. We've seen how they'll debank you for having the wrong opinions. So having this confidence that freedom of speech is a civil right, it's enshrined, almost like religious language in this legal document. No, having an ability to clearly state passages from legal documents, particularly with regards to human rights, and in fact the belief in human rights itself, that these human rights are something which exists independent of social construction, both of these are severe signs of classical liberalism. So again, sign number one, you believe in political persecution as a distinct category. You're suffering from classical liberalism. You need help. Sign number two, and much more common sign, because you'll see these people at protests, they're quoting legal documents. They're saying, it says this in the American Constitution. It says this in the European Convention on Human Rights. Or in Canada, it says this in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. These are all signs of severe classical liberalism, perhaps terminal classical liberalism. There may be no helping these people at that point. And sadly, these ideas, especially human rights itself, get very ingrained amongst the youth, amongst the young people. So it's not just the older generations. Alexander Mercouris, he studied the European Union's legal constitution. He knows it well. So in all these cases, the people who take these legal documents seriously fail to realize that the documents only work in a society with high trust, a society with deep moral foundations binding it together. And that when these documents are removed from that context, they become either worthless or they are used cynically by those in power. If someone you know and care about assures you that this tyrant will be brought down, or this other malefactor will be brought down because of such and such a legal case or such and such a legal infraction, then you've got to be patient with this person. Got to be loving. Sit them down, get them a cup of tea, get them a blanket. Now, there may not be a cure necessarily for classical liberalism once it gets this ingrained, but they do need a blanket, I think. They do need something warm to drink. It could help. One final symptom of classical liberalism, because there's many warning signs, many symptoms, but I'll just conclude with this one. And this is when people repeatedly point out cases where the mainstream media lies, where the mainstream media deceives, where they gaslight us. And this is something that we can all see. I mean, everyone should be able to see that. But the warning sign is not that they see this. It's good that you see this. The warning sign is when they exclaim, "Isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that just incompetent? Isn't that almost criminally negligent?" No, that's the warning sign. It's what they are concluding upon what they are seeing. Perhaps they're not really seeing the truth of the matter. They're not actually just admitting that journalists are among the most evil people on earth. Journalists know exactly what they're doing and they don't care, and that they all work together in a giant conglomerate. But that reality is too terrifying for the classical liberal to face, because his whole worldview, since he was a child, is based on the world and humans having some redeeming quality, that through adherence to these legal agreements and these institutions, we can overcome these evils on the earth. We cannot. Hasta luego, amigos.